Welcome back, everyone, to a new episode of Ray Hall Talking College Ball. I am your host, Ray Hall. Let's get started. Going to kind of go over the rivalry weekend recap. But first, I'm going to start with kind of the coaching carousel. Obviously, big news going through there is Lane Kiffin decides to leave Ole Miss for LSU. Drama-filled weekend, especially on that front, but it's kind of what you've come to expect with Lane Kiffin and kind of his off-field antics in a way. Basically, the big report was Lane Kiffin kind of made up his mind, but the slow rolling, in my opinion, was due to the fact that he didn't get an answer, at least an answer he liked, about how the rest of the season would play out. Lane Kiffin, the classic saying of he wanted to have his cake and eat it too. He wanted to be able to leave Ole Miss for a in-conference rival, but to continue to coach at Ole Miss for the rest of the season. Obviously, that doesn't jive well with the Ole Miss staffers, fans, even the players in a sense, because call it what it is, he's choosing to abandon the team. You can say, well, he didn't want to abandon the team this season. That's fine. A lot of these players had more eligibility left. A lot of these fans have been lifelong fans and will continue to be fans past Lane Kiffin. And these administrative heads have been a part of this program and love the state of Mississippi and Ole Miss. So him leaving next year for Louisiana State, that's just literally right across the border, doesn't really jive well with them. We'll say that at least. I think it was a crazy idea for him to have that, hey, I'm going to leave you for a legitimate rival that we have, but I'm going to stay here to help, get us to the championship. And by the way, the main reason I'm winning is because I think I can win more championships over there. To Ole Miss, in their mind, they're probably like, well, you haven't won a championship here, so thank you for everything you've done, but in all honesty, what makes you think you can win championships when we've given you everything you have, everything to compete at this level, and you still haven't been able to do it? And then two, when we finally get to a spot where our team is performing and has performed that earned us a berth in the college football playoff, you're ready to just up and leave? So that's kind of what it broke down to, and why it took so long, in my opinion, was Kiffin kind of had his mind made up. I think it was in between Florida and LSU. I don't think Ole Miss really had a chance here. And I think he got towards LSU probably last week, and this most current week was really him trying to get the idea of, hey, what if I did leave but I was able to stay here? And that obviously didn't play out, and it shouldn't have. That'd be ludicrous to have that play out. And that wasn't a reference to the can't make a housewife out of a hoe, with me saying ludicrous for that to play out. But there are some people that will say, well, look at John Sumrall. Look at recently hired Bob Chesney. Look at Morris out of North Texas. They're able to stay with their team before if they have the playoff run before they go to the next program. That's a little bit different. It's a lateral movement in a sense, where you're going from a Power 4 SEC head coach position to another Power 4 SEC head coach position. And then you throw in the rivalry part of that, makes it even more complicated. When you're making that G5 to Power 4 jump, or if you're like Jamarcus Shepard at Alabama, who's the wide receiver coach, and he's going to Oregon State to get a head coaching job, you're not really focused on that. He is in direct competition with LSU. So you'd be taking a job where he's in the direct competition of Ole Miss. It's really just a conflict of interest in that sense. So, I mean, think about this. Ole Miss gets their first playoff appearance, right? And generally when this happens, you see with teams like Indiana, SMU last year, some others I can't think of at the top of my head, but those two just last year. They were able to leverage that into the recruiting front, right? They'd be like, hey, listen, we're building here, we just got our first appearance. You can come here and be a part of your second appearance. Come here and build a legacy, build a dynasty in this sense, where this becomes a status and not a one-off. Ole Miss wouldn't be able to do that because Lane Kiffin, at that point, head of the program, would be trying to recruit those same exact kids because, trust me, LSU and Ole Miss create these same players. He'd be trying to recruit them to the cross-state rival. So that wouldn't have made sense. Do I think Lane Kiffin's going to work out at LSU? My honest gut reaction is no. I think he's a great coach. I think he's been able to kind of rebrand himself before this. Old habits die hard, but rebrand himself and kind of like, hey, I'm a serious football guy now. Now, off the field, he may not be serious, but if you look at his previous stints, and they were early on in his career, so you can give him the benefit of the doubt of that. But when he was at Tennessee and USC, two programs with very, very high expectations, he did not reach those expectations there. Now, granted, he left early at Tennessee in the middle of the night, so he never really, I guess, afforded the opportunity to get there. But the LSU expectations, no one needs to talk about this. Remind you, they just paid $60 million to fire their coach. Okay, they fired Ed Orgeron a year after he won a national championship. All right, like they are not sane people down there. And I'm not criticizing them. They love their football, and that's what makes college football great, is the amount of effort and love they have for this program. But if you look at what's happened to Ole Miss or Lane Kiffin when he's had expectations of this caliber, he's not been able to reach them. I think it's also a toxic fan base and administrative there right now, and Lane Kiffin is toxic himself. I don't think it's two negatives make a positive. I think it's going to end before his 5-year contract is up or 6-year contract is up, and it's going to be very, very ugly. Almost as ugly as his departure been today. And if it doesn't work out for Lane Kiffin, I'm not sure he'll probably get another coaching job, a big-time coaching job too. But it'll be another situation that's toxic or desperate. Because what serious program now, if he left Ole Miss for LSU and the amount of toxicness that happens there to cause him to leave again or get fired early, what sane program is going to be like, yep, let's invite that into our building? That's a culture we can stand behind. So I'm going to be one of the first to say that I don't think Lane Kiffin's going to work at LSU. I think he's a great ball coach. I think there's just too much going on externally for both programs, or for the program and Lane Kiffin, and they're not going to jive well. One last thing I'll note on this. If you're an Ole Miss fan that is releasing the Lane Steen files, as I call them, I'm not knocking you for them. Please keep releasing them. They are actually, some of them are very funny to read and see how this 50-year-old man is acting. Others, it's kind of like, why did you guys keep it under wraps? Some of the stories I've heard, I'm like, why are you just now coming public about this? I get it, he was your head coach and he's winning you football games, but this is serious stuff. Like, why? Now that he's gone, okay, cool, we can release this and we don't have to protect him anymore. Why were you protecting him in the first place? I digress. I'm going to touch on two more coaching hires. The next one is Pat Fitzgerald at Michigan State. I think Michigan State knocked it out of the park. Pat Fitzgerald has stayed involved in the game of football, I think specifically in the Chicago area, helping with high schools. So he kind of already has his foot in the door there with recruiting. And what he was able to do at Northwestern, a school that isn't on the same playing field as other Big Ten schools. It's similar to that of Stanford or Notre Dame. I think those are really big ones that I can think of off the top of my head, where you can't get anyone into the school. There's certain academic things you have to do to get players into the school. And then also when the transfer portal opened up for college football, Fitzgerald continued to kind of struggle at Northwestern because you can't just accept any of those credits into that program. It's the same thing that Marcus Freeman was trying to fight at Notre Dame just over a year ago, or earlier this year before the season started, that he was like, hey, I'm trying to, get rid of some of these restrictions and make it easier for us to get talent in the transfer portal. He's not going to have those restrictions at Michigan State. This is a good ball coach, a good recruiter, and he's going to be able to get every ounce of potential out of any player that is on his roster. And he's going to have better players than he did at Northwestern, and was able to compete in the Big Ten, the same conference that Michigan State is in. So I think this was a huge home run hire for them. I'm excited to see what he does. I've always had a soft spot for Pat Fitzgerald. Really hurt when the news broke about what's going on with his program, but was also awesome that he was vindicated and basically didn't have a play in it because I didn't. You build this guy up in your mind, you hear things that go on, and it kind of breaks you, but then it's proven that that was not true, and your original thoughts were correct, and it doesn't really make you question what you think about a person or how you can see a person's character. But the Spartans got a great hire, and I think I'm not going to say they're going to be a Big Ten competitor next year or vying for a playoff spot, but they're going to be playing competitive football. It's been pretty bad since, even with Mel Tucker taking over, with the exception of that Kenneth Walker year, it's been pretty bad there. And I think this is a kind of shining light for them now. Light at the end of the tunnel. Like, hey, we're getting through the dark days. We can start building now. All right, next coach I'm going to talk about, coach hiring. It's another one that I think they knocked it out of the park. There's a little bit of contingency there, though. And that's Alex Golesh at Auburn. If I'm an Alabama fan, if I'm really just Alabama because they've had struggles with USF, even when they were the much higher talented team. But in general, the same kind of struggles that people had with Tennessee in 2022 when Golesh was the offensive coordinator there, that's going to be all across the SEC now. And now he's going to have, one, complete control of his program, and two, really, really great resources and recruiting field in front of him. And that's kind of the contingency there I'm talking about, where it was said about Kalen DeBoer when he was brought in. He's not going to be able to recruit the South. He hasn't recruited at a high level. How is he going to be able to do this? He's not going to have the players. And then he hired the GM, Courtney Morgan, I believe his name is, who's familiar with that area and who kind of handles all like the player personnel and recruiting. Now, obviously, DeBoer and his staff is saying it, but he's like the real boots on ground doing all of that. If Auburn can hire, and I'm not sure if they've announced it, if they've hired someone yet, but if Golesh and Auburn can get a primo GM candidate on their staff, they're going to be very, very dangerous. The resources are there. The fan base is there. The talent pool around them is there. They just have to be able to harness all of it. And I think Golesh has the opportunity to do it. I liked his press conference where he was able to kind of take the questions seriously, but then also give joking answers, especially about the golf one. I think he said, I suck at golf. I'm a football coach. I coach football. That's what I care about. Awesome answer. You can kind of see it, say, he's playing into the hands of the reporters there, just trying to butter him up and everything like that. Maybe, but still. He did with charisma. So if he has that charisma on the recruiting trail, then I think he can do a really good job there. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. All right, now we are going to cover kind of what took place here. Give me a second to pull this up. All right, what kind of took place in Rivalry Week. I'm not going to cover all the games. In all honesty, a pretty uneventful Rivalry Week. But we'll talk about kind of the better games out there. So Texas beats Texas A&M 27-17. I'm not sure how long it's been since Texas A&M beat Texas, but if you ask their fans, for A&M, it's been a lifetime, it seems like. Unfortunately, Texas A&M, you guys dropped the ball. Now we have to hear about a 3-loss Texas team being put into the college football playoff. And it's the same song and dance that Alabama gave last year about, well, how they play against, top-rated teams and everything like that. And last year, I was kind of on the fence about it with Alabama because, one, I think I had Georgia higher in my mind, which they could have been higher after the fact. But they were playing with Gunnar Stockton towards the end, who I'm not knocking, but was just a new starter. So that could have been the thing. But I was like, Alabama, that first half against Georgia, if that is their A game, then no one can beat them. Turns out that wasn't Alabama's A game. And it turns out with a lot of these teams where you put them in this back against the wall, they have to win out scenario. If they're talented, they're going to. But also, once they reach that level, they kind of lay an egg. So Texas, I'll say the same thing that people said to Alabama last year, and I've kind of come around on and agree with now. Is hey, if Alabama want to be in, don't lose Vanderbilt, don't lose Oklahoma, both bottom middle tier SEC teams. Texas, don't lose to Florida. Play Georgia more competitively. I think if you lost to Florida and then like barely lost by a score to Georgia, it'd be a lot different of a conversation. But listen, do not lose to a 4-5 win Florida, and then you'll be in. People aren't knocking you for playing Ohio State. People are knocking you for, one, not looking great against Ohio State, good defense, getting blown out by Florida. Not blown out, I think it was a 10-point game. Losing to Florida, not a good team, and then getting blown out by Georgia. And if you're a Texas fan trying to say, hey, that Georgia game was close, it wasn't that close. Your offense could not do anything. That first drive had to settle for a field goal, and then it got a couple like garbage time plays on a short field. I think it was like a 45-yard drive where you got your touchdown. Your team looks really good right now. Your team very well could be one of the best 12, 10, 8 teams in college football right now. But the games have to mean something, and over the course of the year, they have not looked that way. So they should not be rewarded for it. It's probably going to be a shot to Texas. Hopefully they use it as like a... It's funny because the same Texas fans that are being like, hey, we're a 3-loss team, but look at our wins. We have 4 top 20 teams, like our 4 top 20 wins. They were going through these stats. We beat Vanderbilt when they were 9. We beat Oklahoma, who's a college football playoff team. We've only lost 2 of our 3 losses were to college football playoff teams. Like, we deserve to be there. Those same fans about 3 or 4 weeks ago were saying this Texas team needs to blow it up. This complete terrible job this year. I can't believe that this is the worst wide receiver room we had. What is our quarterback doing? What is our offensive line doing? Thank God our defense is halfway decent, or we would have lost 6 games this year instead of 3. Listen, those teams, yes, they can turn it on, but they don't deserve to be in. If you lose 3 games, I was talking about it 2 or 3 weeks ago. If you lose 3 games, I don't think you deserve to be in the football playoff, college football playoff. That is just my honest opinion. Win more than 75% of your games, and then you deserve to be in. I think that's fair. And then even last year, kind of to defend my point of why I thought Alabama was supposed to be in, was because the conversation was between Alabama and SMU. And SMU had a very weak strength schedule, hadn't played anybody. Their loss was to Nevada, and they were getting blown out by Clemson in the first half. Now they turned it on, made it a competitive game in the second half, and almost won that game. But still, in my mind, I was like, okay, like we're comparing these 2 teams right now. Who is Texas being compared to? If you want to say Vanderbilt, they beat Vanderbilt, and that game wasn't as close as you want. It really turned out to be fine. But okay, who's next in line they're comparing them to? Notre Dame, Miami, BYU, Alabama. Hell, maybe after committee ranking tomorrow, Oklahoma again. Like, these are powerhouse teams who have played a very similar schedule and who have not lost as many games as you. It is not like a brand new SMU team who won or played it in the conference championship of a weak ACC team. These are other powerhouse teams who scale just as well as you do. That's why the argument's different. But until it happens, and I say 3-loss team, I mean 3-loss in the regular season, I'm going to be pretty hesitant about putting a 3-loss team into the college football playoff. The only way I would do that is if they played 3 top 5 teams and lost on one last-second plays every single time, and then played another 3 top 10 teams and beat them all. Then I'd be like, okay, you know what? Cool. I can kind of see that argument. But we haven't had that situation yet. We're pretty close with the Notre Dame game, but they haven't really had the top 10 wins. So, but we'll see. All right, next game we're going to talk about Ohio State versus Michigan, the game. Michigan was lucky in this game. The game was kind of over after first drive. You had the explosive pop on the ground. Then you have to settle for 3. Get the interception, very short field. Then you have to settle for 3. At that point, I was like, yep, Ohio State, they got this in the bag. We can turn this off. We don't have to watch it anymore. Because the overall demeanor of the Ohio State team, I think Josh Pate talks about it a lot. The competitive character of that team is completely different this year than years past. So, Michigan, the biggest head scratcher for Michigan is this year was not supposed to be a year you competed. You did well, finishing 9-3. That's a good season. But, however, the main goal for the season was to develop Bryce Underwood. I don't think he's been developed. I don't think there is something in his game that has improved over the course of the year drastically. Like, sure, he's a little bit more comfortable back there. Yes, he knows the offense better, but you guys never really challenged him or had him like grow. So what's the plan for next year? You're spending a lot of money on him. You're going to have to spend a lot of money to get receivers in the portal to help him. But after that, like, is he going to be ready to go next year? This year was supposed to be the year to prep him, and next year was supposed to be this was a reloading year, and next year is supposed to be the year you guys are firing back firing on all cylinders again. I just don't think that's the case. So, Michigan, more questions than answers after that game. Ohio State's, I don't think I have any questions left on them. People have been talking about it all the year, and I'll put a hand up. I think I said it about around week 8 or week 9. I was talking about the Ohio State defense. I was like, yeah, this is a really good defense, but I don't think it's a historically good defense. Put my foot in my mouth there. Ohio State's defense is very, very good. The only question I have about them, and it may not matter, but if they get into the playoffs, and they only have to play 3 games to win a national championship, or win 3 games to win a national championship, but if they get in 3 games back to back to back, where it's really tight, the margins are closer, the teams scale a little bit better, there's a lot more talent on the field. No one's going to be more talented than them, but they can be somewhat closer. How's it going to look then? But that's the only question I have. And like I said, it may not even get to that point. Their defense may be so good, their offense may be so opportunistic, where they never are in a point where they're trailing in the third, fourth quarter against a team who's equally skilled as them. So Ohio State, the conversation has become Ohio State versus the field. I think today, if you ask me, I would still take the field. I think there's a lot of good teams out there, and for Ohio State to not win the national championship, they need one bad game. So you're giving me 12 or 11 other teams. Really call it 8 other teams, because probably 3 of the teams that make the field aren't going to be really national championship contenders, even though they're in the playoff. I'll take the other 8 today. That may change in a couple of weeks after the first round of the playoffs. We kind of see how it goes, but yeah, I'm still taking the field, but it's getting close to where I'm taking Ohio State. All right, next thing we're going to talk about OU versus LSU. Oklahoma pulls out a win 17-13 at home. It was a classic Oklahoma game. And by classic Oklahoma game, I mean similar to the past 4 or 5 games they've played, where their defense is very stingy and their offense just kind of waits for that one big play, takes advantage of it. Because every time a big play has presented itself, their offense has taken advantage of it. You can give them flack about, hey, you guys aren't putting up crazy numbers, you guys aren't scoring a lot of points, which I agree with. I don't think it's a well-oiled machine right now. But when these game-breaker plays happen or occur, and there's a chance for them to seize the moment, they do. So you can't fault them for that. And that defense, I mean, I'm not saying LSU's offense is top tier, especially not right now. But they don't give you an inch. You have to earn everything out there. So hats off to them. A lot of people, specifically Notre Dame and Miami fans, probably even Alabama fans, were hoping that Oklahoma would lose that game to LSU. But they didn't. I'm really excited to see this team, especially if they get a home playoff game. I am very, very excited to see them in the first round and just see like what they just take away everything on defense, make you earn everything, and their defense turns into their offense sometimes. They're going to be a tough out. I think Brooks Austin tweeted it out and he said it very well. And I don't have the actual tweet up to read it verbatim, but the idea of it was, do I think a team can score 24 in Oklahoma in the playoffs and win? Yes. Do I want to be the team that has to find that out? No. If you told me, like, yeah, they had to play Oregon first round, I'm like, okay, Oregon can get 24 points on them. I'm not sure if Oklahoma's offense can keep up. But if I'm an Oregon fan, I'm like, damn, I really don't want to find out. And they may be cocky going in the game, but after that first quarter, they're going to be like, holy hell, we can't get anything going. After that second quarter, going into the second half, after halftime, they're going to be like, please, someone's got to break, we'll figure something out. Then it gets to that third quarter, and you're like, oh my God, we still haven't figured anything out on this team yet? How is this game so close? They haven't done anything on offense yet. I don't want to be a team that finds out. All right, next game we're talking about Vanderbilt versus Tennessee. Diego Pavia, you have punched your ticket to New York. I think it would be a disservice to the sport of college football, Vanderbilt and Diego Pavia, if he is not a Heisman finalist. He has earned that right with how he's played this year. If I'm a Vanderbilt fan, I'm sending him messages and emails being like, hey, I got $50K for you. Maybe not that much. I don't know how deep their pockets are. Probably very deep, very successful alumni base. But I got X amount of money for you. Let's fight that case another year. Gives you another year of eligibility. Because I'm not saying that Vanderbilt's going to falter if he does not come back or when he leaves. But I am saying give him another year. Have the guys around him get better. Bring in more talent. That's going to be a very tough out. Unfortunately, at 10-2, I just don't see a way for them getting into the college football playoff, which sucks for them. It's their best year in history. But if they can keep building off of this, which Clark Lee just signed his extension recently, they can keep building off of this, possibly flip a 5-star quarterback, Jared Curtis. I think he's making his announcement Wednesday. Then it sucks for the SEC as a whole because they always talk about their schedule being so tough. Now with Vanderbilt, who used to be the easy pencil that in as a win game, is not that anymore. But damn, it makes it so much better for college football. Like Vanderbilt, Tennessee if this was a continuously routine ranked matchup at the end of the year, that would be awesome. Like it just makes the rivalry weekend even better. I thought it was perfect as it is. So it makes it just even better. All right, next thing we're talking about, I'm going to talk about these games kind of in conjunction. Miami at Pitt, 38-7, and Notre Dame at Stanford, 49-20. So I think both these games, if you look at them, Miami had a better win margin over these teams than Notre Dame did. Which, does that matter that much? Who knows? I'm not sure really if that doesn't matter that much. We're going to get into kind of the college football playoff format here after I talk about these two games and the next game. Then we'll kind of go into like how I'm seeing the field as it currently plays. But Miami's trying to make a case in the sense of, hey, we beat them worse than Notre Dame did. So what's left to talk about? We beat them head-to-head. We had the same record. We have more ranked wins. These common opponents, we beat them worse. Like, what's up? Like, give us something here. Why are you keeping us out now? And all honesty, there's a lot of people who have been saying it, and I kind of agree with them. I think there's a tough decision for the committee because how it looks now is Notre Dame and Miami are going to have to be in the same pod, and you're going to have to talk about that head-to-head. And you're going to have to give a scenario or an explanation of, yes, these two teams played. Team A beat Team B, but we're going with Team B in this situation. And that's going to be a really tough sell. This is also the same committee that left out an undefeated Power 4 conference champion for a one-loss Power 4 conference champion. They have to make tough decisions all the time. This is going to be one of them. In that same year, they left out Georgia, who was back-to-back national champions. And their only loss was in the SEC championship at a neutral field by one score. they will make these tough decisions. And at the end of the day, they have to have an explanation. And I promise you, there's no explanation out there that everyone's going to agree with, no matter what. But once the games start, people really stop caring. I think Florida State fans still kind of bring it up. And as of today, I keep seeing Georgia fans bringing that up more and more, which I didn't really think was a thing, but I'm seeing it more now. So if they choose Notre Dame over Miami head-to-head, I don't agree with that whatsoever. And I think in the perfect scenario for the college football playoff, they don't have to make the decision. They can put them both in. And the tough decision is, okay, where do we rank them? I don't think it's going that way. I think a lot of craziness would have to happen for it to go that way. And I'm not even sure if there's still even enough left. Because some of the other scenarios don't look good for the state of college football either. All right, last thing we're going to talk about, the big one, not the big game, the big one. Alabama versus Auburn. Jordan-Hare Stadium delivers another thriller. Obviously, Alabama was kind of a win-and-end situation for the SEC championship. It was 17-0 about midway through the second quarter. And then Auburn kicks 2 field goals, which if I'm DJ Durkin, why are you going for field goals there? Yes, you had a chance to win the game, but at least one of those, go for it. I think it was a 4th and 2. Why aren't you going for it there? And maybe the rumblings were that Durkin wasn't running for the job, and a lot of people thought he was the guy that was going to get it, and he didn't want to mess it up by making a dumb decision. But I also think if you wanted to seal the deal that you're getting the job, beating your in-state rival and keeping them out of the SEC championship and college football playoff, that kind of guarantees that you get that job. That's just my opinion, though. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure Greg Olson, if he listens to the show, will give me an explanation on why kicking the field goal was better there, not going for 2 or whatnot. But we'll see. This was Alabama played the same game, or Oklahoma did, that Oklahoma played against Alabama a couple weeks ago. I thought that, it's almost identical, because in that Alabama-Oklahoma game, Alabama kept putting the ball on the ground. And it didn't bite them until it did. And it was kind of the theme of the game, where it's like Alabama needs to be a lot more careful with the ball if they want to kind of pull away or get the win here against Oklahoma. Auburn needs to be a lot more careful with the ball if they want to upset Alabama. And Auburn wasn't. Auburn outgained Alabama by 120 total yards. Ty Simpson didn't have a great day throwing the ball. I think only 150 yards passing. Alabama kind of had a run game. Wasn't elite, but they were able to run the ball against a tough Auburn defensive front. So that's good for them. But the main question now is, okay, is Alabama going to be able to return their offense to... It was never really elite. It was just very efficient. Or they maybe will go back to this efficiency. Brooks Austin did a breakdown. What was wrong with Alabama's passing game? And he said the main thing was, hey, these gotta-have-it plays, or these big plays on the sideline where Ty Simpson's thrown in between 2 guys, sneaking one in there. The first couple of weeks, they were making the catches. The past couple of weeks, they haven't been making those catches. So I think Alabama is very banged up right now. But even when they are at full health, it wasn't like they were some offensive show. It was just very efficient. So they can get back to playing efficient football. And luckily for them, a banged-up team loves hearing this. Hey, you have an extra game this week against Georgia, who Georgia is also equally as banged up. So we'll have to see how that plays out. I think a lot of people have already posted as, hey, whatever team can field a full 22 players on both sides of the ball, then that will be the team that wins it based off how many injuries these teams are suffering. Which the team that loses that game is in a tough decision or position, because if they make the playoffs, and when I say if Georgia loses, they're still in. If Alabama loses, I think they're still in, but there's a chance they're not. Then they're in a tough position where they have to play in 2 weeks, and their team's already banged up, so they don't get as much rest But if you win that game, you set yourself up pretty nice. You get almost a month of rest, 3.5 weeks of rest, get your guys back, recoup, and everything like that. So that'll be an interesting storyline to watch. But at the end of the day, Alabama was able to get the fumble, get the turnovers. Offense kind of got bailed out by their defense, which they've been doing a lot this year of. But the one thing I will say, you can knock the offense for their overall production, but I'm not going to knock Ty Simpson as much. There's a lot of drops in his games, a few reads he kind of just missed. But when they're in gotta have it's 4th and 2, where a field goal takes the lead, they go for it, and he just fits one perfect into Horton. Horton had 3 touchdown catches, and they were all in the red zone, very crucial, kind of gotta have it plays, and they were able to get it. So that's what I'll say with for Ty Simpson. All right, now moving into the college football playoff talk. Let me pull this up real quick. All right. Okay, so we're going to go through, I kind of gone back and forth how I wanted to go through this. I think I'm going to lay out the field first, not talk about the odds as much, but just kind of like, okay, this is what we'll do. We're going to go over who is guaranteed in right now. And by guaranteed in, I'm taking 1, their body of work, 2, where the committee has ranked them, and then 3, what the betting odds are for them. So if your odds are not listed as like, hey, yes or no, you're going to make it, I'm pretty much guaranteeing you in. So Ohio State, Indiana, Georgia, Oregon, Texas A&M, Texas Tech. Those are guaranteed in. Ohio State and Indiana, I would say guaranteed to both have buys. Texas Tech can jump some teams and make it in there and get a bye. Oregon might be able to. It depends on where they rank Texas A&M. Georgia probably can get a bye. If Georgia wins, they get a bye. If they lose, it'd be between them and Texas Tech of who gets that 4th bye. Because a lot of people have said it already, and the public wants to argue this. If Alabama does win the SEC championship, they are getting a bye. They are jumping into the top 4 and getting a bye. That is going to happen. It is the highest rated conference from top to bottom, and you just won that conference. You are going to get a bye. Especially over other teams where they didn't even play that weekend. You are going to get a bye. You couldn't put Texas A&M or Georgia in a bye over them in that position because they just won the conference they're in. I don't think they would reward Oregon in that situation, who didn't play, didn't win their conference. So that's my mindset on it. You can disagree with it as much as you want. That's how I view it. All right. The almost guaranteed Ole Miss, Oklahoma, and Alabama. So Ole Miss, their odds to miss the college football playoff is they don't offer a yes. It's only a no, and it's plus 3,500. Meaning if you bet $100 on that, they would pay you $3,500 in return if Ole Miss were to lose or to not make the college football playoff. Oklahoma, their no answer for yes. Their no is plus 2,200. Oklahoma's in the college football playoff, almost guaranteed. I didn't put them in the locks solely because there are some scenarios where it can get funky, but I still think they're safe. Then the third team I said was Alabama. Alabama of these 3 teams is the one that has a yes option. But for them to make it, it's yes minus 3,000. So for you to win $100, you have to bet $3,000 for them to make it. And the no is plus 1120. So just based off these odds, all the no's are in the 4 digits, and that's why I put them as almost guaranteed. I was trying to play out scenarios based off the conference championship outputs that would equal up to Alabama not making it at plus 1120. And even if Alabama lost and BYU won, everything was only like plus 750 or plus 800. So that still is another plus 320 of odds available. And these odds are all from FanDuel. I think I checked them at 3 p.m. Eastern. So that's where I'm going off of this. I checked Hard Rock Bet. I checked DraftKings, and they were all very, very similar. So I don't think this was like a one-off scenario. This is kind of just how it's laid right now. All right, longest conversations. I'm not going to get into the odds here, but the longest conversation is going to be had is Miami versus Notre Dame, especially they get in the same pod. How are they going to talk about the head-to-head? And then these teams, I have them as need to win the conference championship. UVA, North Texas, Tulane, BYU, and then a slight asterisk for JMU because they would need Duke to win and beat UVA. But now we're going to get into our scenarios. So first scenario I have is underdogs win. That means every conference championship has an underdog winning. So in that, I would have Indiana number 1, Ohio State number 2, Alabama number 3, Georgia number 4, Texas Tech number 5, A&M number 6, Oregon number 7, Ole Miss number 8, Oklahoma number 9, BYU number 10, Tulane number 11, and JMU number 12. With Indiana, Alabama, BYU, Tulane, and JMU being your 5 conference champions. This scenario is obviously a nightmare for the ACC because there's no ACC team listed. This would not really help their case of, hey, it's a Power 4, not a Power 2. More realistically now, if you kind of look at some of the ratings, it might be a Power 3 because Big 12 has kind of proven that, like, hey, we're not just a wet blanket or a rollover conference. If you kind of look at their out-of-conference matchups, they still have a losing record, but they're more competitive than the ACC was this year. So that scenario would be, I think, awesome for Texas Tech regardless, because the real question is, could they jump Georgia? Or they wouldn't be able to jump Georgia with a loss. But then they'd be 5 or 6. So that'd match them up with Tulane or JMU in the first round. And I think they'd be very, very happy to have a home playoff game, 1, get the income from that, and then 2, have it be against a G5 team. The only other difference it might be in that is BYU might be able to jump Ole Miss / Oklahoma, possibly Oklahoma. I don't see it happening. I think 10 is probably where they would come in at. But this scenario is also a nightmare for Notre Dame. Just based off the odds, if you look at it, BYU money line against Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship is plus 420. Notre Dame's odds to miss the college football playoff is plus 420. Basically saying those 2 outcomes are almost solely dependent on each other. BYU wins, okay, Notre Dame is out. BYU loses, Notre Dame is in. I don't think it's directly like that way, but it is interesting to see those numbers kind of almost identically line up like that. All right, next scenario we have is favorites win. So that'd give us Ohio State 1. I think in that scenario, possibly Georgia would jump to number 2. Indiana would be 3. Texas Tech would be 4. A&M would be 5. Oregon would be 6. Ole Miss would be 7. Oklahoma would be 8. I'm going to jump 9 and 10 for a second. UVA would be 11. North Texas would be 12. The reason why I jumped 9 and 10 is because then you have a conversation of Notre Dame, Alabama, Miami, and kind of BYU. I think if BYU loses, there's no way they can jump up into the scenario because the precedent has been set, and I'm not fully agreeing that this is the case, but it would be crazy for BYU to jump and Alabama in this scenario when they both lost their conference championship game, and especially in a game where this would be BYU's second loss to this team, and this would be Alabama's first loss with another win against that team coming on the road. So the conversation really becomes Notre Dame, Alabama, Miami for 2 spots. I previously mentioned that Alabama was minus 3,000 to make it. So if you just go off the betting odds, then it becomes between Notre Dame and Miami and who's going to make it. I specifically did not mention these odds when going through this scenario because I didn't want to, I guess, kind of give my hand away when I'm talking about this, but Notre Dame to make the playoff, yes, minus 420, no, plus 310. Miami to make the playoff, yes, plus 650, no, minus 1,200. So at least FanDuel thinks, and the committee up to this point, you could believe all the, hey, they weren't in the same pod, and that's why we haven't honored it yet. But I would find it hard to believe that Miami is going to jump Notre Dame in a weekend where both of them don't play. So tomorrow's a really big night. Tuesday night, it's really the big night for this. But that last spot's going to come down between Notre Dame and Miami. And if you believe FanDuel, it's going to be Notre Dame. So that'd be an interesting matchup. Set up Texas A&M versus North Texas in-state game. Oregon versus UVA. Ole Miss versus most likely Notre Dame. And then Oklahoma versus Alabama rematch, but this time in Norman at the Sooners' house. That would be a pretty solid first round, I would say. And like I said, the only differences or changes that could be made is Georgia and Indiana at 2 and 3, and then Texas Tech and Texas A&M, based where they rank them, at 4 and 5. I could see them giving Texas Tech the nod to get that first round bye if they win their power conference, but I don't see them jumping Indiana at 3. So I think the highest Texas Tech can go is 4, and the lowest Indiana can go is 3. A&M may still be able to pull out a bye in that scenario, especially if it's an unimpressive win against BYU for Texas Tech. But since they already have that 3-score win against this team, I don't think that would really hold much weight. All right, now this is the chaos scenario, as we call it. Ohio State wins, Georgia wins, making them 1 and 2. Indiana loses to Ohio State; they drop down to 3, or they can drop down to 2, and Georgia's number 3. Texas A&M is at 4, Oregon's at 5, Ole Miss is at 6, Texas Tech is at 7, BYU is at 8 as a conference champion winner, Oklahoma's at 9, then 11 and 12 is Tulane and JMU. Alabama would lose in this scenario to Georgia in the SEC championship. Notre Dame and Miami are sitting at home praying for them to lose, and it came to fruition. But now they are battling for that last spot at the 10 seed with Alabama and Notre Dame and Miami. This is another scenario where the ACC can be left out completely. And the reason why this scenario is tricky is because even if the committee honors the head-to-head against Miami over Notre Dame, then Miami would have to beat out Alabama. And you can talk about common opponents there. The Florida State one is what a lot of Miami fans have been using to reference, which I agree with. Like, yes, hey, as a common opponent, you beat them, they beat Alabama. Cool. Then you look at Alabama's body of work compared to Miami, and the ranked wins just aren't there for Miami comparatively to where they are for Alabama. And then also that second loss is to a playoff team for Alabama. And the other second loss for Miami would be to a non-playoff team. I think Alabama gets a nod there. And I kind of mentioned earlier, other shows have been talking about today, but there's going to be some, I don't want to say rigging, because just because FanDuel puts these odds out there doesn't mean that's what the committee is going to do. But there might be some rigging in the sense where, okay, we have to have a scenario where Alabama is ranked ahead of Notre Dame now. Because in these scenarios that played out, Alabama's pretty much a shoe-in at their minus 3,000 to make it. Then you would have to talk about, okay, Notre Dame versus Miami. How do I put Alabama in front of Notre Dame, which would then put Notre Dame right next to Miami, and have that conversation of, yep, all right, Notre Dame is going to be ranked ahead of Miami, even though Miami beat Notre Dame earlier this year. One situation or explanation I could see them putting out there is, hey, Notre Dame, Jeremiah Love was banged up coming to the season. I'm not even sure if he was banged up. They could say that. Obviously, he wasn't utilized that much in the Miami game. They didn't really have their best player playing at his highest level, who has since come on. And Miami only won by 3 on the road in the first game of the season. If you're a betting man, I'm looking at you, Chris Felica, the artist formerly known as The Bear, because he loves using these power ratings and rankings there. I'm pretty sure if you look at it, home field advantage generally counts for 3 points. So that's saying that on a neutral site, this outcome of this game, these teams are evenly matched or close to evenly matched. In a neutral site, this game would probably go to overtime and it'd be a tie. Or if it was at Notre Dame would have won by 3. That's why you have to be careful if you like using power ratings out there for some of these results that aren't neutral sites. Because then people can start playing, well, if you flip it around, this home game became an away game. That team that won by 4 would have lost by 2. I'm not saying I agree with that. I don't think power ratings and betting odds are the best way to dictate who should be in the playoff. However, if you use that argument, you're kind of opening Pandora's box there and being like, well, yeah, this team's still rated ahead of this team. Well, it's like, okay, that team's still rated ahead of this team. They're getting 3 points on the home. That's not going to be the case in the past the first round. Those 3 points are kind of mute now. Or if you gave that team the home field advantage, they would have won that game. It opens up a whole can of worms that I don't think should be opened up with to begin. All right, appreciate you guys tuning into the episode. That is the end here. Slowly make my way up to the 25 subscribers on YouTube. Like I said, that would be awesome. Would alleviate a lot of the problems I've been having with having to upload these videos because I think I just do live videos on YouTube. Additionally, the X account at RayHall_CFB is making some good traction. I've been trying to have a lot more conversations throughout the day as work permits, my actual day job permits me to, talking to people about these scenarios. That actually brings up another point I'm going to get into real quick because I've been saying this a lot on Twitter or X all week. People are complaining about College Game Day, ESPN College Game Day going to Alabama versus Georgia in the SEC Championship instead of going to Ohio State, Indiana, the 1-2 matchup. Some people have called it the Heisman decider as well, which I have previously called it that too. I believe it's going to be. And choosing SEC over Big Ten. To that I say, and they already pointed out, hey, SEC has a big deal with ESPN, and that's why they're going to that game. This is unfair. This is bias, all in this. Okay, when's the last time Big Noon Kickoff went to the SEC game? I think they covered one SEC game this year, and it was Ohio State versus Texas at Ohio State. All right, when's the last time the CBS show went there? Oh, they hasn't? Okay, cool. So you're saying a team that has a deal with another team, or with a company that has a deal with a conference, is choosing to prop up that conference to make more money? Cool. Yep. ESPN is doing that. So does Big Noon Kickoff. So does CBS. All these teams do that, or all these networks do that. If you're going to point out that the SEC and ESPN does it, then also point out, hey, Big Noon does it too. Hey, CBS does it as well. That's just my point of view on it. Now, if you're mad because ESPN has a bigger footprint, you know what? You can be rightfully mad about that. But be mad at your commissioner because you signed the deal. Or be mad at the teams in there because they can offer a good enough package to these networks to make this work. I'm not saying, just because ESPN has the SEC deal, ESPN is the biggest, so the SEC is the best conference. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is, yes, they have that deal. They are going to honor that deal to make them more money. This is not crazy to anyone, if you really think about it. It's basic economics. But people want to make it this whole tinfoil hat of, no, it's ESPN, SEC bias, whatever it may be. Someone was arguing today on Twitter, it's like, well, the AP poll, it's filled with ESPN guys, and this dictates the college football playoff rankings. The AP poll has one ESPN-affiliated voter, is Reese Davis. It has one ESPN-affiliated reporter. It is not littered with ESPN guys who are pushing this SEC propaganda down your throat. Look this stuff up, guys. It is easy to find out there. You can go and find, hey, these guys have SEC bias or SEC affiliation, or they work for ESPN and they have to do this certain thing or push certain teams. Go look it up. If you can be like, yep, hey, this is a majority of SEC bias coming from this, and prove the facts there or show it to me, I'll agree with it. I personally have gone and looked at it. I think out of the, how many is there, like 35, 40 AP voters, only like 12 have SEC affiliation, which if you think about 16 programs out of all of Power 4, really not that crazy amount. And a couple of those 12 aren't sole SEC. They have other teams and other Power 4 programs that they are currently covering. It's not like, don't just, you've been getting fed this lie of, hey, the SEC is similar to the Epstein files where it has all this behind the scenes work going through it to prop them up. The SEC from top to bottom is the best conference. To which you can counter, and I agree with, that Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon are 3 of the top 5, possibly, if you want to really knock it down, top 6 teams. SEC and Big Ten both have really good teams in them. SEC has more top to bottom. Big Ten has more at the top in all of college football. I'm not going to lie to you and be like, yep, yeah, SEC, that if you don't play in the SEC, you can't play football. No. But I will tell you that a 10-2 in the SEC is more impressive than a 10-2 in the Big Ten. Maybe not directly, just blindly without seeing the schedules. But for the majority, if you're taking an average schedule in the SEC versus the average schedule in the Big Ten, you go 10-2 in each, I'm going to side with, okay, the SEC team is probably better. All right. Sorry I got sidetracked there. I want to get that out there because I've been having that conversation a lot on X with people. But speaking of X, follow me at RayHall_CFB. I'm trying to be more active out there. Please like, comment, subscribe the video. This scenario that I haven't really talked about there, I'm getting sidetracked again, but I didn't touch on it, so I'm going to touch on it now, is JMU fans, you still have a chance, you still have a pulse. You just have to hope that Duke beats UVA and that the College Football Playoff Committee isn't going to jump Duke probably 15 spots into the top 25. But there still is a chance that Duke beats UVA, JMU wins, and Duke gets the nod there. I think the G5 Mafia would be a little bit outraged. Unless you're from the American Conference, because I think you just hate the Sun Belt Conference, specifically JMU fans. So you'd probably be happy with that and get to pat them on their little head and being like, oh, you guys thought you guys were going to get your team in. That's funny. But I think, I'm trying to think what would be more outrageous is if Duke was the lone ACC representative or if there was no ACC representative at all. There'd be a lot of toxicity on X that day, and I'm here for it. One more selfish plug. Keep releasing the Lanestein files. They're very funny to look at, some of the things he did, and his whole hot yoga crew that he was with, the college-age girls complaining about his behavior at the classes. Very funny to think about this 50-year-old man who's coaching SEC football, having beef with college girls over hot yoga. But anyways, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on X at RayHall_CFB. I will be back tomorrow, or actually I'll come back Wednesday after the college football playoff show, and probably giving you my conference championship week preview on Thursday since some of the games are on Friday. But appreciate you guys for watching, and stay safe, and hope you guys had a happy Thanksgiving.